What's good? It's another beautiful day. Um, it's a Sunday. It was pretty good at church today. I can't complain. We went over pretty much mental health and overall that it's okay to care about your mental health as a Christian. Just because we have God doesn't mean God can't help us up here. We're gonna have our days. We're not perfect, so that was cool. And now we're getting into Corinthians 9. I think I might go to 11 today. Depending on if I want to talk deep into chapter 9. Depends however I start it, right? So chapter 9, it pretty much goes off after, goes about Paul surrendering his rights, right? Because it has a little heading in the study Bibles and whatnot. And I was confused at first. I'm like, surrendering rights, well, what does it even mean by this, right? So I read it twice because over the 2 days when I usually read 5 chapters a day, keeping that pace for a little while. And every time I go back to reread the chapters, after I just do like one or two chapters at a time, I just read it. I'm just like, huh, you know, I'm still not really understanding. So I actually want to look at what's it called? The study Bibles material, right? And I do it every now and again. I know even though it's a study Bible, I don't really use the study portion because I want to get an interpretation for myself, and then go off of that to see if I got the right interpretation, to see if it counters me because I think more in a debate type of mind. But I like to get the truth, right? So going more into it, pretty much in verse 9, it says, "For it is written in the law of Moses, you should not muzzle an ox when it treads out the grain." I was confused about this verse, right? It's pretty much talking about equal labor, equal rights, right? That you're not going to pretty much force this animal not to reap the efforts of its labor, right? By muzzling it and not allowing it to, feed off the grain a little bit because, it's doing your work as well, right? At least that's how I'm interpreting it. I don't really know what oxes do, but obviously you don't want to muzzle the animal while trying to help you out, right? And I think this also applies to humans as well because if you're doing it to an animal, why not apply this to human slaves, etc., right? Especially slaves during that time, right? Pretty much, he goes to say later on in the chapter in verse 11 that if we have sown spiritual things among you, is it too much we reap material things from you, right? And here he's talking about money, right? And he's like, so, I already helped y'all, but yeah, is it wrong for us to want bread from you? But no, he's like, nah, I don't want bread from you. That's where he's pretty much surrendering his right. And he's saying, nah, I don't need it, right? Because as he goes on later in the chapter, he's like, I borderline he's a people pleaser. Just straight up, he wants to please the people around him by becoming not just like them, but relating to them. He relates with the believers. He relates with the non-believers, obviously in the Word of God, but still with the non-believers. He relates with the weak and the meek and everything, so that he might win over these people, right, in their own regard, right. And in chapter 22, he says, "I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might have saved some," right? He's doing this so he may save the people, right? He doesn't care about the rewards that he might get in this lifetime and this earth and everything, this world, right? He cares about what God can get from what he's doing right now, right? If he can save even one person by relating to them, he's accomplished his mission, and I think it's very commendable. And it definitely, after I understood it, it's given me more of a certain thought to it and everything. So that's cool, right? Um, keeping it going, keeping it going to chapter 10. He pretty much starts it with the law of Moses and how people, the Jews during that time before Christ came and rectified the law, they used to eat spiritually, right? They used to give their food to God, and they used to have laws on what they could eat. They could eat pork and etc. and whatnot, and all the different laws, right? So he goes more into it, and he proceeds to tell the church and the people there that pretty much take heed with being idolatrous, right? Showing idolatry to other things, right? And then pretty much proceeds to go into the idea of the food part. That Where is it at? He pretty much just talks about temptation, right? The temptation of all these things that are like idolatry, and I'm guessing overall just sins and everything. And he's like, God wouldn't tempt you more than what you could take, pretty much, right? This only goes with tempting, right? I don't think it goes with like difficulties in life, but tempting, sure, I can see it, right? Especially if you put your faith in God, tempting kind of just goes out the window, right? Because the harder the tempt, and if you look to the Lord, He cleanses it in general. It could be light tempt, it could be heavy tempt, it could be whatever. If you just turn your eyes to the Lord and make your focus Lord bound, He will cleanse it. So that's that. And he proceeds to say later on in verse 21, you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and then the table of demons, right? Which is he's saying, you can't be both sides here. You have to choose either to eat from the Lord or eat from demons, right? Which makes perfect sense. Because earlier on he says you're either a slave to God or a slave to righteousness, or you're a slave to the world, which just means you're a slave to sin. So you're either a slave to God or you're a slave to sin. It's one or the other, right? And pretty much that's an easier way of saying it. You can't drink of this cup and then expect to get a little bit of this. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Um, and then he pretty much says to go further into it, he's pretty much just saying overall, if you decide to do anything and eat anything, and if it hurts your conscience, obviously don't do it, but do everything you can through the glory of God. If you eat, do it through the glory of God. If you drink, do it for the glory of God, etc. All of the above, do for the glory of God. As long as it doesn't cause, like going back to a few chapters before, if it doesn't cause a direct hurt in you, then you can do it, especially if it's not written in here as it's against the law, then do it, But yeah, I think I'm gonna stop there for today. It's pretty good topics, generally wide. I didn't expect to go that deep into chapter 10, but good enough. Next chapter goes over head coverings and the Lord's Supper. I've already gotten the general area of it, and I'm trying to understand more of the head covering, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, read the Lord. Oh, wait, no, yeah, read the Lord, but yeah, read the word. Deuces.